come to order and start. Let's see where my agenda is here. Could you all stand and join me with Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any add-ons to the agenda, or can I get a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you.
Get a vote on the agenda as well, please, real quick.
Yep. 5-0.
Yes.
Thank you.
Public comment, Ms. Moray, you have anything to say?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, old business is old business. We're going to continue the final review of Chapter 4 definitions today, but I wanted to start off and maybe get Wes to pull up the PowerPoint presentation and go, if you would, Wes, to page 3.
Slide 3.
Yeah, slide 3. Okay. I'm not here fussing about previous boards or future boards or present boards, but if you look at that timeline there, Module 1 review is what was done by the previous board. No one that's sitting on this board now, with the exception of David Neal, was a part of the beginning review. And you see where the Module 2 review would go and the Module 3 review would go. So obviously, we are way behind in what we need to do to move this thing along. So I want to just digress a little bit. I went through, Wes sent us the minutes of 2 planning board meetings that would kind of, shed some light on where we're at and where we've been. So you all have the April 17 of 2017 minutes. And we're not going to go through the minutes, but what I did is I went through those minutes, April 17th, 2017, through to what I could find was the comment that said from Chairperson Williams, the previous chair of the planning board, at the May 7th, 2018, which is about a year, that was the conclusion of Module 1 review. So I just kind of trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? And so I just went through the minutes, and I'll briefly tell you what was going on. Was they started with the Module 1 in April of 17. And they started that night with definitions. The next meeting in May, they finished up Chapter 20, which is building regulations. In June, they worked on Chapter 22, which is what we will be working on after definitions. In July, it just seemed like they got from July to August to September, and Wes, I'm sure, will remember it, and so will Elizabeth. They got bogged down in height issues, lot coverage issues, and just kind of, rather than review what was in the text of what Code Right was putting out there, they were at the same time trying to rewrite and refigure other things in the building zoning ordinance. With lot coverage issues and height issues, which is two biggies. Then in the September meeting of 2017, they the planning board was asked by the town council to provide, quote, a list of complex issues. So that's what they were going to try to pare down and work towards to maybe streamline what was the task at hand. So in November of 2017, they began stormwater management as it relates to Module 1, which was on that list of complex issues. And then the December meeting was tree removal discussion as it related to Module 1, which was also on that list of complex issues that town council wanted to get addressed to streamline this thing. So in January of 2018, the trees was back on the table, side yard setbacks on 50-foot lots, parking requirements, commercial design standards, relocating oceanfront homes. And it just kind of boiled down to not being able to move forward with trying to get this document to where we needed it. They were almost trying to find stuff in there that needed some big major change. So I think in all of that, it just slowed the process down. And I think for us, not so much that we want to find trouble, we want to find it, but we don't want to go looking for it if we don't have to. And I just think that looking back at all these minutes, there was a ZTA for lot coverage thrown in there, which the town council said no to. There was a very lengthy special meeting in April of 2018. Started at 1 o'clock, ended at 5:20. There were some variances thrown in there. So the planning board has tried to work what's in front of them as far as addressing issues that come before the town, and then trying to, work towards getting this document done. And granted, 5 years is a long time. It has kind of been put on the back burner, and it's taken a pretty long time. So like I said, I'm not here fussing at anybody. It's just the way it is, and it's the reality of things. This, as you all know, this Code Right is not an easy read. And so anyway, as far as what we have done as a town, and specifically the planning board since my first meeting, which was July of 2018, we as a town, the planning board has put it before the town council, and the town council has adopted, since I've been on this board, some major ZTAs. Lot coverage was the first one for me when I was sitting on this board. Large house occupancy and septic, which was another big one that we just tumbled over and over and over. Non-conforming lots, another big issue that we got sorted out. Height and fill regs at the end of 2019. And then a town code amendment that Wes and Dabney worked on very hard, and staff put together 34 pages of flood damage prevention. So I'm saying all that to say this. There's a lot more going on than just working on this code right within this town and this planning board. And, but it's time to kind of move forward and do our thing. We were at the original module, and once again, Wes, can you dial that to slide 8? If you look at the original module 1 text that the prior planning board hit coming out of the gate, was they were asked by Code Right to do everything in orange. So general provisions, chapter 4, chapter 20, buildings and building regulations, chapter 22, zoning, 26 subdivisions, and 28 flood damage prevention, as well as chapter 36 offenses and enforcement. So as far as I can tell, and Wes, you can help me on this, the last time the planning board when they met and concluded module 1, they did definitions, building and building regulations, and some zoning.
They did all zoning. They did all of the ones in orange, all the chapters that you see there in orange. And the reason why that's not put before you now is after further discussion with Code Right, it's determined that the planning board is only required to review and recommend the chapters as required by law.
Right.
So in this case, we chose to go with only those chapters as you all consider moving any chapters necessary moving forward.
But the planning board took chapter 22 on zoning
Yes,
and completed in their conclusion.
to my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay. So that brings us to the memo that we got from Ben was dated September
I believe it was
September 9 of 2020.
20. Yes, sir.
Okay. He, in his review, the memo that we've got, his comments on chapter 22, zoning of the town code update. He was looking at the Code Right December 2018 draft. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right. Now, the draft that we have before us has everything that Ben has pulled out that he's noted. My question is, and I can find some of it looking through the zoning, but my question is, on those ZTAs that I just listed, since I've been on this board,
Mhm.
and the flood prevention town code amendment, are we good on all of those being back in?
So I have gone back and done my own review as well,
Right.
because I wanted to make sure that one, what you're bringing up now, that the planning board comments were incorporated.
Yeah.
That including ZTAs, as well as town staff comments that were provided for the chapters that the planning board did not have to review. And
Right.
at this point is still not going to review. And for the most part, everything is taken care of, but I do have in my notes to send to Code Right, and I can go to it now. Ben did a great job making sure that those ETAs were included,
Right.
and you'll see there's a big difference.
Yeah.
You'll see in the notes.
Yeah.
Where Ben Gallup said, please revise to
Sure.
ZTA-1809 PB01 or
Yeah.
whatever. For the most part, yes. However, there are, I think the one that comes to mind right now, the inconsistency in chapter 22 is lot coverage.
Uh-huh.
There are some inconsistencies in that language. I sent you all for this meeting, whether or not we're talking about chapter 2, but since you asked the question, the first bullet, 22.1.4, page 22-6, new definitions, lot coverage, inconsistencies, setbacks versus yards. The
Yeah.
lot coverage inconsistencies I'm referring to, I don't know if you all have gotten that far in your review, but that is one that stands out for sure that needs to be corrected. I've made it in my notes as staff to pass it on to them or to code write,
Yeah.
that needs to be revised to reflect exactly as that ZTA was adopted.
Okay, well, in essence, what you've done with what you sent us, what you're referring to,
Yes.
was looking back over everything that was changed from their draft of December 2018 up until Ben reviewed it and turned his in
And then-
in
and then-
September of 2020.
And then this current draft, the adoption draft, November 2020, includes all of his revisions. So
Yeah.
I've gone back again to read to make sure that
Okay,
his comments and everything have been addressed in this new versions from when Ben did his review. He was using the December 2018 version.
yeah,
So after going back through it, the sheet that I provided, in those bullets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those are the only, as I think the way we put it at the last meeting, y'all asked me to go through and point out topics for
Yep.
discussion. And those are the only ones that I found. But I've also found, bear with me, 5 pages of minor comments that include typos, incorrect references, small, I would say minor revisions that can be made by me just sending this to him,
uh-huh,
to code write, telling them that this needs to be done. So that's where we stand with chapter 22.
okay,
And I mean, I've reviewed the other chapters you all have as well, and I have comments on on the other chapters. But since you were asking about 22 specifically, so.
well, I mean, I just wanted to get a broad overview for, what we're doing, and like I said last time, I don't want to be redundant.
Right.
If the previous planning board has done chapter 22 zoning, and Ben has gone over it, and you have gotten some other information, then I think we can, once we get through with definitions, we can move fairly quickly to that.
Right, and also the sheet that I gave you, in my review of the other chapters that the planning board is currently considering, I did not find any topics for discussion out of those.
Okay,
And all I have are minor comments that can be addressed, or incorrect references or typos or
Yeah.
things of that nature.
well, how does code write handle, rewriting stuff at this juncture here?
I've discussed with him, our current schedule, that the planning board conducting its review, that we will have additional comments and we will send them to him. Then there would be revised, and then that document would be what goes to the planning board as a recommended document if you are so inclined to do so.
Okay. Well, one other thing that I had on my list of just general questions was where or is the state law 160D just intermingled in here to your satisfaction, to staff's satisfaction?
160D is, there are certain parts of it that Mr. Gallup, town attorney, inserted as comments.
Right.
And those references and corrections have been made. However, our entire zoning ordinance and other code chapters for that matter are not in 160D compliance at this point, and that would be our next project. But it was good to see and good to note that Mr. Gallup pointed out and already got our foot in the door, so to speak, on the 160D references and corrections.
Right.
There are, in fact, I don't know how far you all have looked in chapter 22, but he did have code write put some 160D corrections in.
Well, I don't know if everybody knows what 160D is. I just really kind of educated myself since the last meeting, but maybe you give them a quick spin around the block for,
Right, it's a reconsolidated chapter in the general statutes that the legislature passed that consolidates the planning, development, zoning regulations in the statutes. Up until this was adopted or passed, the county had its set of zoning development regulations and municipalities had their own. And basically 160D combines those chapters together and made some other changes. And I've attended some school of government webinars, and they have a lot of resources available. I'll be certainly, doing my best to get a grasp of what all it entails. I can't tell you every single reference or change that's involved in it, but generally speaking, it was done to consolidate all the planning, zoning, and chapters together. And I think it, in some ways, attempted to simplify some processes.
and it's due July 1 of this year. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was, I believe, the legislature had set a deadline, so to speak, that it was to be in effect. I believe I don't recall the month last year. But due to COVID, they extended it. In January 1 of 2021, it's already effective, but they said that the legislature has said that July 1, 2021 is when local governments should have their ordinances updated to be in compliance with 160D. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that we're going to delay that process, but one question that's come up in all of the discussions that I've heard about it is, what if we can't get it done by July 1, 2021? And the answer that I've heard is that, no one's going to come bang on your door, but basically after July 1, 2021, regardless of what your ordinance says, what applies, the law is 160D.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to my question. You got half of what I was intending to ask. How would we comply with 160D if we weren't ready to send this code right? Obviously, it's been 5 years and we want to get it done. But what if town council said, no, we're not prepared to move this forward?
I would have to defer to the town attorney to give the answer to his answer to that question.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I would say in a worst case scenario, if we don't have our ordinances updated to be in compliance with 160D by July 1 or July 2021, then we would have to enforce our ordinances or as if they were what applies in the statutes.
Right.
In other words, if our ordinance says something that's contrary to what 160D says, then we will have to go with what 160D says.
But it wouldn't be something that you'd have to write into. It's a crazy hypothetical, but if we denied to recommend moving this forward to town council, or they said they wanted no part of it and wanted to kick it back to us because there was too much weird stuff in code right, what happens?
Again, I would say that the statutes, the rules and requirements established in 160D is what we would have to enforce.
Right. But would they have to be written into our original, the
They will
code
need
of ordinances that are there right now?
So if the code update were to not be adopted or not even any parts of it,
Right.
If that's what you're inferring, then, either way, whether this is adopted or parts of it or, none of it, we still have to have our ordinances, whatever form or whatever language it may entail, in compliance with 160D.
Okay. Thanks.
And it's my hope that we can do that by that time. But like you said, if not, then that's a good question, and that's what would happen.
Well, I've run on. Anybody have any?
I just have a quick question. Did you indicate that the town attorney has reviewed code right, and if we were to adopt the code right update, we would be in compliance with 160D?
No, just, there are a few references,
Just
out of a good number. I've only picked up on a few references in the language, as opposed to many
That need to be included.
that need to be included.
I see.
Anybody else have anything for Wes?
Nope.
Okay, well, enough of that. Let's open up, and go through some definition stuff here. Okay, what I wouldn't mind doing is just quickly going from A to Z. And, if you've got questions or concerns about, any definition, then, we need to note it. And I guess Wes can, if we decide that that's which way we want to go, you'll make notes. And
I'd be happy to do that route. As I also stated earlier, I have comments as well.
okay,
So
yeah, absolutely.
Whichever y'all want to go first, that's fine. And we will take down any comments that you all have. If it's a question that I can answer,
Okay,
if it is in fact a question, if I can answer it, I will.
Yeah.
If not, it'll be documented and we'll get it back to code writing. One other question, or I guess clarification. You'll notice that the chapters have, or the definitions rather, have at the end of them stating which chapter the definition comes from. But you all are certainly welcome to make comment on any chapter you'd like.
Right.
I mean, if there's something you found.
well, I would like to just kind of try to narrow it down and just keep into the definitions rather than jumping into
Yeah.
chapters.
I do have a question. Are the chapters that it's in, like zoning, where you have zoning at the end of a definition, are you going to leave that in the definition aspect of it?
The actual word zoning, I don't think that that's, I don't think
I
that that's.
think it says somewhere that they get rid of that.
Yeah,
in the
that's-
final
I
draft.
think
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, just as an opinion, when I was going through this really helped me to say, oh, this is the chapter that the definition is in. And for a layman going through this, after they go cross-eyed, say, so, like I've tried to look things up on the town through the years, and it's always difficult sometimes finding it. It's almost like a table of content where you could look up, say, motel as a hypothetical alphabetically, and you would see what chapter it refers you to. Now, I don't know whether you want to maintain this, but I just found, I don't know whether it would affect anything, but I found that one word at the end of the definitions extremely helpful, cut down on time and looking at things. And, I just think it's a thought to have, that you were going to remove it. I understand. And if it's removed, it's removed. I'm not that picky over it. I just think it is a good reference for myself. I was looking through and I said, what chapter is that? And it says zoning, or it says whatever. And it kind of helps.
Well,
So,
to take it a step further, even if that was helpful, maybe they could cite, where, which part of chapter 22 it came from.
yeah, that would entail a lot more work.
It
We'll
would.
be
I
here
mean,
for three
Yeah,
more meetings.
Sure. Well,
But I
correct.
think the zoning aspect, or the different, it's just a thought. I don't know whether you have to think about it or whether you have to get it approved, but I just think it's almost like a table of contents. Only it's alphabetical, what you're looking up, and then it refers you where to go. So it's just a thought to consider.
Well, I think this is on the very first page of chapter 4 definitions. It says, for the time being, the origin of each defined term is included in yellow highlight at the end of the term.
Mhm.
This origin information could be deleted from the adopted code or used to color code the table rows by original So,
Yeah, it
origin.
could be.
So I'm fine with it. Anybody have any strong opinion about leaving the yellow highlight in at the end?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I being the layperson too, when I studied this, it was easier to go
Okay.
back because I had the code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that would be first note on definitions.
Yes, sir.
We're making progress.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are we done?
All right. Looking at the bottom of each page, you got page 4.4, which starts with accessory building. Does anybody have anything on that page that needs to be talked about?
I'm going to be there's a couple things, just one thing on this page, and then there's only one other page I have an issue, I have a question on. Do we have to have pole barns, hay sheds, and the like qualify as accessory structures on farms? They may not be, it's like we don't have farms. They're not, you can't have farms here, and yet we have it in the definition. Is that superfluous?
Surplusage.
Surplusage, is that one of the surplusages?
It's probably,
Or do we have to have that because it comes under some floodplain aspect?
You're exactly right. That was, I don't know if you recall in the flood damage prevention review, but there was a lot of language. There were references to like mangroves
Mhm.
and other things. And y'all made that comment saying we don't have any things like that here, but do we still have to have it in our ordinance? And
Right.
Dabney Shelton and I, we spoke with representative from the state, and they said basically that it's from the model ordinance, you got to have it in there.
Okay.
yeah, well, and it doesn't hurt anything. I
It
mean,
doesn't
you-
hurt anything. It's just if you're trying to shrink things.
Believe it or not, there is a pole barn on Bayberry Trail.
There it is.
There it is. For all intents and purposes, it's a pole barn. And, I mean, it looks okay, but and you could have a shop in your backyard, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, okay.
All
That's
right,
the only thing I had.
so anybody? Okay, page 5. Once again, to get back to what Wes was saying about the alteration of a water course, that was in the flood prevention
Yeah.
stuff, so.
Okay, I have another thing, and then I know, I don't understand, with some of the things, it looks like redundancy. Are you allowed to have a motel in Southern Shores?
No, sir.
Okay, then why do we add adult motel? To me, that's comparable to saying dogs are not allowed on the beach between May 15th to September 15th. And then we have another definition that says brown dogs are not allowed on the beach between May 7th. It's like a redundant thing. If you're not allowed to have a motel, you're not allowed to have a motel, whatever it's used for. And it's just a thought. I see this, it's like, why do we have it?
That's a very good question. And if you look on the screen from the current code, section 36-57, that's a current definition in our current code. And this all comes from legislation. I don't recall the year, but basically you had to include certain references and language that referenced adult-oriented businesses. I wasn't working in this profession when all that happened, so I can't really explain any of all that. But
It just threw a big blanket over, anything that.
it's my understanding, it was, legislation
Yeah.
that it was a requirement that you have to have it, whether or not you allowed it or not, you still had to have references to it. So, and one thing that was helpful for me throughout this project is, if you want to find a definition, especially a definition, if you're looking for a term in the current code on Muni code, you can type in that word and do a search.
Yeah.
It'll come up and highlight as it is on the screen.
Okay.
Speaking of that, if this is adopted, will it go on Unicode site, or how does this go online?
So your question refers to the format of the town code update.
Correct.
And it is, as of right now, this is the code update language in the adoption draft
Right.
from November of 2020 is the proposed format. And whether or not we send it to Municode, if they can do it in that format, I'm not sure. So if you all preferred a different format, it would be in your purview to suggest reformatting. If you're happy with the format as is currently
I
on the
like
screen
this.
with the current code in Municode,
Yeah.
which doesn't have it's a different format than what we have proposed
Sure.
right now.
Well, where would we get this otherwise?
Where would we
This
get,
document,
where would we get
the
what
the
document?
zoning ordinances, or the.
Oh,
code
it would
ordinances.
be probably a PDF. And it does have links. You would have different links you could click on with the chapter references, and it would take you to those chapters and
Yeah.
sections, similar to Municode. But it would look exactly like what you have in front of you.
Right, well, for some reason, I can't see what we've got in front of us fit the format of Unicode. So I guess that's something to discuss at a later time.
Yes, it is. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I had one thing, just curious, appeal. Why in the world would they just narrow that definition to as used in the flood damage prevention standards? I mean, that just seems like, why is it even in there? Like, you can look up appeal in the dictionary. And it's a definition, but it only applies to one narrow scope thing.
Well,
Just,
so if you were to look at it, the appeal has two different definitions.
yeah,
One as used in the flood damage prevention ordinance, and the other in how it's used in the zoning chapter.
yeah.
That's the way that Code Wright proposed the definitions in this document.
Yeah, it just seems a bit odd that we would need a definition for what an appeal is, whether it's, flood damage, or appealing a variance, or appealing a zoning text amendment decision, on and on. Appeal is an appeal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
With respect to the flood damage prevention part, we didn't really have a choice.
Because they call it out.
Right.
Okay, next page.
I have a question,
whoop,
and
sorry.
that's only because I went back to the general statutes, because I was doing side by side.
Uh-huh.
And there's probably these last 5 that aren't in the North Carolina general statutes at all, but as far as definitions. So these definitions were added at some time and not incorporated into the North Carolina general statutes. And I have found that when you go through, there's quite a few.
Yeah, well, municipalities and county, local governments, you can have definitions that aren't in the statutes. And I'm not sure, I haven't asked Code Wright to provide us with a list of what is and what is not in the statutes.
And I guess the question is then, what constitutes a definition to be here and not there? Is there any line that we have to watch if we were making changes? Because I noted there were quite a few discrepancies between the two.
I would have to defer to the town attorney on that. And on the zoning chapter, I don't recall off the top of my head, without looking at my notes, any comments that said that this definition was inconsistent with what a statute
Right.
referenced.
Right, understand.
Well, I suppose any excess definition, if it's not in our zoning ordinance or code of ordinances, if it's extra, it's extra. It's like, having a hotel when it doesn't apply, but I mean, some of this is kind of cut and paste by Code Wright, you can tell.
Yes, sir.
They're doing it for Asheville or Charlotte or Boone or wherever. Anybody else got anything on page 4.6? Page 4.7. Wes, I had one question, because it applied to, Ed Lawler, apiary, bees and beekeepers. Is that allowed in Southern Shores?
It's included as new language. It was a statutory change. It was part of legislation. That would be in the animals section of the
Right.
code update. But
Okay,
essentially, yes, the legislature said
good,
that you have to allow beekeeping.
because Ed's a beekeeper.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, not commercially, but, all right. Anybody got,
Let me see something. No, I'm good.
they've got, I'm looking at building setback line, they're calling,
Yeah.
the current says the outermost 3 feet of uncovered porches, steps, eaves, et cetera. That's our current. So for some reason, they changed the definition at the building setback line, a line parallel to or concentric with the street right-of-way edge that establishes, I don't know, it just seemed like the old language was a little bit easier to follow than what they've got there.
And so that point brings up a good point. One of the topics of discussion that I brought up in the zoning chapter, and that's where this would fall as well as in this subdivision chapter, is page 22-6, rules of measurement.
Uh-huh.
And this is addressed in there. So this definition, building setback line, has a part of the current definition.
Right.
And one goal was, or one, I guess it's, you could say it's also, it was a recommendation from CodeWright, is to take out requirements in definitions or exceptions in definitions and put them in the language, the actual language and not the definition.
Yeah.
So I believe that's what was attempted here.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, as far as the definition goes, we can certainly, I mean, that's something that if you all want to provide a comment and say, no, we'd rather the current definitions keep requirements or in this case, exceptions or exemptions. I'll certainly pass that on, but that section, the measurement, rules of measurement, that's going to be a good discussion.
Yeah, well, we need to, I think we did a lot of work on getting to that point for language in our current ordinance, and I believe that we need to have that current language in our current ordinance as far as building setback line. And then, you know, they're calling it building setback, and then, you know, they've got a whole another word for it or term for it.
Right, and I didn't know if you wanted to get into all that tonight, but
No,
otherwise I will make the note, yes, sir, to keep the current definition of building setback line
Yeah,
as currently stated
yeah.
on page 47.
Because I've noticed that they're fairly freely putting in, you know, definitions and then say, see some certain area, and then they don't define it. But there's a few of those in here, but that building setback line definition, I think needs to go back to the current.
Yes, sir.
Anybody on that?
No,
That's
I
on
agree.
page 7.
Yeah, I agree.
I had one thing on page 8, thought it was a little bit odd. It gives us a definition of chief, and in parentheses, fire chief.
Yeah.
What happened to the police chief? Where's his definition in here? Seems strange, but couldn't it be fire chief or police chief?
I will make that.
Yeah,
I
I
will
mean,
note that.
Yeah, fire chief / police chief, you know.
yeah,
Thank you. I had one comment on page 4-8. There's no definition for child daycare small home, which is a current definition and a current permitted use
Yeah,
in our list of table, permitted use table, or schedule of district regulations
Yeah.
as it is now, use table in the code. So I do have that comment to pass on.
okay.
That
Well,
needs to be included to be consistent.
yeah, we need to get that in there.
How is that different than child daycare residential?
Child daycare small home is a child care facility in which care is provided in the provider's home for a maximum of 6 children, other than the provider's own children under the age of 13 years old. A small child daycare home shall not be deemed a home occupation as provided in this section. That's the current definition.
And this one, the child daycare, says a child care facility in which care is provided in the provider's home for a maximum of 6 children, other than the provider's own children under the age of 13. So it's kind of similar, isn't it?
But it doesn't reference the small, yeah, it's similar, but it doesn't reference small home as it's a use. It's an actual use.
Can we, if you look at the sheet of definitions that we have, the interpretation, definition of terms that Wes, on that, in there, beginning with child daycare and going to child daycare small home, why can't we put that exact language, which everybody has lived with for years since it's been enacted? Why can't that exact language land?
That's my comment is,
Yeah.
they have child daycare code, the code update language has child daycare definition and child daycare center definition, but it does not include
Right,
child daycare
small home.
small home.
Well, can you note?
I have it, yeah, I have
Yeah.
it as one of my
Okay.
notes to send on.
Great.
So we'll just take out residential? I mean, doesn't residential imply home? Does it have to be small home?
Yeah, it's the same definition, they just added a sentence. Or we have currently an extra sentence that has to do with
I
an
guess,
occupation, home occupation.
I guess my point is we should, I want it to be, I would rather it be consistent.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to page 9. Once again, I just laugh about it, these just random definitions. Collection. As used in chapter 12, solid waste. You could probably have collection in 5 more places in this zoning ordinance. Why? But I guess that's surplusage, once again. It's not hurting anything, but it just seems a little goofy to me. Okay, page 10.
Linda, should we add pickleball to country club?
Might be a bit presumptuous.
We're updating. This is going to be out there for years to come.
Racket Sports.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There you
Racket
go.
Sports, because they're going to do, the Civic Association is getting a pickleball court.
Yeah.
Yep. Both of those pickleball courts can be approved as an accessory use.
Yep.
So we won't have to do anything with the definition of country club thing. Fortunately.
I was being facetious.
All right. Okay, next page, page 11. Wes, anything in drive-through facility, large or small, jump out to you?
It did not, I don't have any comments on it.
Okay,
It's, if I recall, it's consistent with the ZTA. I didn't make any notes on that one.
anybody else on that?
I just had a question about the dune system, frontal dune, dune system, primary dune. Since it's already noted, could we just eliminate that? I mean-
Surplusage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with Xing that out. I mean,
Noted. Remove both.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 12, I just had a general comment and question about dwelling unit.
Mhm.
Wes, do you read that as anything related to Airbnb or VRBO capability?
All right, I was writing that comment. You were referring to the definition of dwelling?
Dwelling unit on page 12.
Yes, sir. I had a comment, dwelling, I had one on dwelling townhouse.
Mhm.
There's no reference to the 10 feet required in the current definition. Also is not shown in section 22.4.4A4. But you're just referring to dwelling unit?
Yeah,
I
just the
found-
definition.
I didn't see any problems with that.
Okay. Because I think as a town, and I think Mr. Ogburn's probably been through this down in his former town, was, at some point, we're going to have to make some legislation here in Southern Shores about how to deal with shared living, such as Airbnb and VRBO. I mean, at some point, lots of towns have taken it on. Some have been successful. I like what you all came up with just identifying who's doing it. And it doesn't cost, what did you all pay?
If I recall, there may have been $25.
Yeah, it was nothing. It's just mainly identification. But anyway, that's for another day.
And, a lot of effort was put into creating that definition, that all tied into, the large home,
Correct.
issue that we tackled,
Yeah, okay.
2 years ago. Mr. Gallup put a lot of effort in.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Putting that together.
Okay.
Wes, can we go back to the townhouse
Yes, sir.
aspect? I find it so almost confusing where it says, I have a question mark, I put it last time I was here, a single-family dwelling unit located on its own lot. Then the next sentence is, the dwelling unit may not be attached to adjacent single-family dwellings. May or may not be attached. So if it's on its own lot, what is the other single unit doing on, it's 2 units on the lot.
They have their own.
What's that?
Most townhouses are individual, you own
Yeah.
that plus a little piece of land.
Mhm.
And then you have a piece of land, those are individual lots.
But with that definition, it doesn't mean we're allowing it. It just is defining it. Once again, it's a cut and paste for Charlotte's code rewrite. Who knows?
No, I mean,
We don't have,
We don't have any townhouses yet.
not townhouse, no. I mean, we have duplex.
Right.
Duplexes.
Yeah,
Sure.
which is somewhat similar, but yeah, we don't,
yeah.
no, sir.
But you don't see a problem with leaving it in. Just, I mean, we're questioning why it should be in there in the first place.
I did not put that comment down, but I mean, it's a comment you all can certainly provide.
Anybody want to delete it?
If it doesn't apply,
No, it is not applicable to what we're doing in Southern Shores. It may at some point, but I don't see any harm in leaving it. I mean,
Yeah, you
it's
could
just as
leave
long
it.
as it doesn't allow anything.
it's just, to me, it's kind of confusing because as other things we don't have or we don't allow, and
Yeah.
we still have it in here. And I'm trying to shrink it, basically.
We might be able to knock 2 or 3 pages off this thing. Who knows?
No, we won't. Maybe 2 or 3 lines, but
Well, I would have to skip forward to chapter 22
Mm-hmm.
to see, and I don't know, if you don't mind bear with me a second.
It's also a new, it's not, this is a new edition.
Right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Tony had a point, highlighted new in the dwelling townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see many of them.
No.
I'll make the note and just,
Okay,
what I'm
yeah.
saying is, so if we take that out, then obviously all the other references have to come out as well.
Well, they can,
So that's something that we can
Yeah,
take, that will be
okay.
taken care of.
all right, let's do that.
So,
Okay, page,
I have one.
Oh, sorry,
question.
Ron.
I'm sorry. The dwelling unit definition that's in the rewrite is not the same as what is in the town code?
the current code.
Yes, the current code. And I was just asking about that because I understood, Wes, that the current code definition was written very specifically and with great thought.
in my review, it matched up.
Yeah, I'm getting the same.
Yeah, I see where they match up. I have it on the screen.
Okay.
They did add a few words at the end, though.
Physically
Made available
separated.
for owner occupancy, rental, or lease, which I don't think that would have any
Okay,
bearing on that definition.
it looks like they've moved, yeah, they've just moved some of the words around.
Yeah.
I apologize, yeah.
And Robert, that was as a
Yeah, I
result of a lot of,
Yeah,
Wrangling.
that's why I didn't want to just take theirs.
yeah,
Okay, never mind, sorry. Sorry, it is the same content, pretty much. It's just the wording is moved around a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't see any issues.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Page 13.
I apologize. To go backwards, just to summarize, I found on page 4-8, camo was defined twice. I had
Found
delete
what?
4-8, that camo was defined twice.
Right.
4-9, coastal high hazard area. 16.3, the reference to 16-3B should be 28.5.6. And those were out of sync on my notes. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Okay. Hey, just keep it up, Wes. We're relying on you to be the eyes.
Yes, sir.
We'll be the ears.
Been through it several times.
Yeah. Okay, on page 13, we've got event facility, event traditional family, and events. I think that they're all covered well from a standpoint that what he did was take one definition and turn it into three, or what Code Wright did. Isn't that the footnote that says it's been split into three different terms? Do
Yes,
you-
sir.
Do you see anything problematic about having three terms rather than one big term, which in the current ordinances is one big definition?
I didn't have any comment on that.
And then once again, we broached the event dilemma, and we kind of got told that it wasn't a problem, and truthfully, it probably hasn't been a problem. But I think at some point, we're going to have to do a little bit better than just, that's our ordinance right there. Those three terms are our event ordinance in Southern Shores. Just like the one big term was the event ordinance. We have no event ordinance in Southern Shores, other than a definition. So at some point, when the need arises or we're, told to, do something about it, we really need to think about crafting some simple ordinance that we can control events outside of what these three terms define. Because there's no ordinance in here for events. It's a definition. Just my
I agree.
point.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do anything about it tonight. The language is fine. They don't add anything, they don't take anything away. But eventually, we as a town are gonna have to address events a little bit better than what is currently before us. Okay, anybody on that page, 13?
Yeah.
14?
I just have a question. How did they come up with a family and getting the number of 5 persons?
All right, Wes, jump in. Family, I mean, it's
I mean, what if
that-
you
that
had
def-
3, 4 kids? Yeah,
that-
6.
it's
The unrelated 5 persons, I do not know. That's in our current
it's
language.
legalese for some,
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay.
our town attorney, Ben Gallup, is, we've questioned and I've kind of gotten this, we've all gotten kind of an interpretation, but I think it has standing.
Okay.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe when you talk to Ben, just make a note, Wes, that we question the definition of family and see if you can get a definition from Ben.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I just can't imagine them writing that, then no such family shall contain more than 5 persons. I mean,
I
how can you
actually,
say that?
I actually think it's in the North Carolina Vacation Rental Act, and it's somehow justified that.
Gotcha.
Anything else on? First line of stable vegetation. Yeah, it's got, I don't know if they should maybe not put per comma in parentheses. It's over there on the side that says the Division of Coastal Management shall determine the location of the stable, but
Add parentheses, camel.
yeah,
Yeah, Cameron.
yeah. Okay, anybody else on that page? Page 15 is everything that's on 15, almost in its entirety, comes from the Town Code Amendment, flood prevention that was passed this past year. So, but did you see anything in there that might have been missing some attention, Wes?
On page, I'm sorry, you went to 15?
Yeah, all the language about flood zone, right on down to floodway, that whole page.
Real quick, on page 414, I'm sorry to go backwards. Definition of fill material.
Right.
They need to, as he did previously, add as used in the flood damage prevention ordinance to the beginning of fill material, because that is not in any way, shape, or form how we relate it to the zoning ordinance. So I think it's important that they distinguish, that needs to be distinguished.
Yeah, and I actually had a question mark on that because we had used it in height and fill
Correct.
ordinance that town council passed. And we need to distinguish them, like you say.
But on page 415, I did not have any comments. Which one are you referring to?
No,
I mean, yeah, for the most part, all of the flood references.
Yeah.
I've gone and looked at the current flood damage prevention ordinance and what we have here, and everything seems to be pretty matched up pretty well. However, like I said earlier, there are some references that aren't correct.
Yeah.
Like the formatting references.
Yeah.
Where in the current section, it'll say current code will say 16-B, that should be 28 or, and whatever numbers afterwards, and they just don't match up.
yeah, yeah.
So I have some comments like that, but otherwise, despite some of those, he's done a pretty good job capturing what we've done with the flood ordinance.
All right, page 16. Once again, for me, do we really need the definition of following? I mean, come on. Refers to the next
Next
items appearing immediately after the term. Can we strike that just to be hateful? I mean, really? Why do we need to define something that you can look up in a dictionary?
Noted.
Yeah.
Surplusage.
Surplus.
And I guess I had a question, or just questioning their rationale about front lot line and front setback. Granted, it says see rules of measurement, but couldn't we get in this case, couldn't they add the definition of what those are? And then as well, see section 22.14. I mean, they go to great lengths to define what a, footprint is, or a freeboard, but I would prefer to see a brief definition of front lot line and front setback.
Do you all agree?
Let's see how detailed it is.
We'll definitely get in on that one in the zoning because there's, and Wes has pointed out to us, there's,
Yeah, the problem is they do all the grass and everything. Do you want all that here?
no, I'm just saying a brief definition of what a front lot line is and a side lot line is. It may be in here. No. Anyway, it's just a thought that maybe we could see a brief definition of it and then say, cite it as rules of measurement or zoning, however they want to do it, but just be consistent about it.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't, we run into it would get pretty long because businesses have different setbacks also. If you're attached to a business or if you're in a corner property, there's different setbacks
Different setbacks apply.
depending on
For the district that you're in.
the district that you're in, yeah. So what we would do if we did that, we would end up, it'd be pretty long. You couldn't put front setback. And then if you're in a different district, it depends on the district. So I think the fact that it's in the zoning aspect of it.
Well, I mean,
We're not talking about the rule here, just the
No, just
definition.
a
Right,
simple
right.
definition. I mean,
I believe we're going to need to have probably a lengthy discussion about that section, rules of measurement.
yeah.
It's
So-
just the definition is just the setback. How much that is for you is covered in the measurements or is covered in the zoning chapter.
It just needs to be a simple, basically a generic definition.
Yeah.
And then
But I do think
gets
that's why they didn't
expanded
include it.
upon in the.
Yeah, it's in the
I mean, and as a matter of fact, with Wes's memo that he sent us, the very front or very first bullet is setbacks versus yards. I mean, they call it required setback in some spots and they call it a required yard in others. We'll get into that in chapter 22.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy because it needs to get scrubbed up, in my opinion.
All right, well, I've add definition, front lot line, front setback.
And while we're on that page, if you might as well include ground elevation average and ground elevation lowest. That's been
It's always been controversial.
a ZTA that has been done since this was all written. So, yeah, we just need a simple definition.
Yes, sir.
Okay, page 17. Once again, Wes, keep you writing. Height, maximum height, top plate. Simple definition. Just if they can define what following means, they certainly could put a generic, simple, and then refer you to wherever.
Height maximum
Yeah, the height of maximum height of top plate.
instead of the reference.
In conjunction with, I mean, just a
So-
simple definition and then say,
So in all these cases where there's currently, say, C section, you would like to see the definition and the reference.
yeah, in those two instances there, I mean, I guess,
No, I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yes.
That's fine.
okay, on page 17, Tony, this is yours.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
sorry.
Go back for my notes. I had ground elevation average, ground elevation lowest. What was the other one?
And then
Top
height,
plate. Height.
yeah, both height definitions, maximum and top plate.
Okay.
In the same vein as what we're doing with ground elevation and front line, front setback. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
You-
get
If
you
you're
to
talking
weigh in.
about the historic
Yeah,
structure,
you're seeing
that's kind of the generic, what you have to go under. I think once we hit into the chapter, I see an error in the chapter when we refer to that.
Okay.
There is a mistake in there. But the chapter, when you get to 22, Wes, it says, you more or less, they must have you must have the state of North Carolina approve it. And we know for a fact that's not the case because they disapproved something that ended up getting approved. So whenever we get to chapter 22, just as a preliminary with a historic landmark, we could maybe correct that, or you could take a look at it. But it says shall, we have to get rid of and optional kind of.
Does 160D address historic structures? I
It does,
think
yeah,
I saw somewhere when I was
It
skimming.
does, yeah,
Mhm.
there's a big
does.
part of it. So in our current code, the historic landmark designation, the program and the language that gives us the authority, that's a whole separate chapter,
Right.
separate from zoning.
Mhm.
160D to historic landmark commissions, historic landmarks themselves. The language, addresses historic preservation commissions and historic districts, consolidated all of it with 160D. So yes, a lot of
Okay.
our historic landmark commission references will
Right.
need to be updated to reference 160D.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what they've got in here right now wouldn't be updated at 160D, or has it been?
Well, like I said, so we'll basically we'll be moving the historic landmark language somewhere close to the zoning language.
Okay,
And we're gonna have to have the correct references.
all right. Okay, thank you. Anybody else on that page? Page 17, go to page 18.
Can we combine home occupation and home-based business? I mean, one is below the other, says see home occupation.
Yeah,
Can we just get rid of
I had
that?
the exact same thing.
So did I.
Cite the section and just delete.
And the same way with improved dune walkover access, see dune walkover access improved. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that, just get rid of that. And now at the bottom, large drive-through facility, large home dwelling, see drive-through facility, large drive. I mean,
Yeah.
just get rid of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so to simplify my note, if you don't mind, for 418, I'm gonna say for definitions that say C, the other, just combine the two.
Yeah.
On that entire, on all of those on the page. The ones you referenced anyway, are all the ones shown. So home occupation, dune walkover access.
Yeah, just eliminate
Just
it.
delete home-based business.
Just take it out completely.
Wherever it says C, then delete.
If it says,
Yeah, but can't we even take improved dune walkover access out? Take that whole line out?
I mean, you either find it in dune walkover or improved dune walk.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
I'm all
already
for
there.
striking that whole definition,
Yeah.
Right.
improved dune.
And the same thing with the large drive-through.
Drive-through, yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
already have that.
Sure.
Just strike those two
Yeah.
completely.
So delete improved dune walkover.
Yeah, and delete large drive-through facility and large
Yeah.
home dwelling.
Mhm. 19, we're back into the flood maps.
Then I'm glad we have got a definition of household trash. I was really kind of wondering exactly what household trash was, so Code Right has enlightened me on what it is. I'll be making sure I understand it from here on out.
there was a.
Wes, we don't allow ice bending structures, do we?
Yes, sir. There was a text amendment and subsequent conditional use permit issued for one once at the marketplace. Applicant never submitted an application.
Where would it have gone?
In one of the parking, in the parking area. It's one of the ones, like you see, there are
Yeah. but
2 or 3 around here.
Yeah,
It's a
ones that-
freestanding structure. Go up the steps.
Yeah.
And it vends ice in a bag or a cooler.
Yeah,
Someone wanted to put one here. They applied for a text amendment. It was approved by council.
Okay.
It was set up as a conditional use. I don't think the applicant ever applied.
so better keep that one in there. Okay, anything else on page 18? Okay. The letter of map change is straightforward. Local
Mhm.
elevation standard comes off of
Yeah.
flood damage prevention. Anybody? Page 19,
And it's,
Wes? See
I have
anything?
none.
All right, page 20. We got a lot stuff there. Well, I would just say we just roll that into the next discussion about, section 22, 1.4 rules of measurement. But honestly, I think some of those, it would be, that's a lot of definitions to just go from lot area to lot flag and define it. They're going to define it for us, and we're going to talk about it in 22. So I would just say, let's
I think that's
bypass that.
I think that's a good way to move forward.
Yeah.
And then, during the discussion, if need be, we can revisit and say, well, do we need this in the definition?
Yeah. Okay, well, we will definitely be getting on all those and when we discuss zoning. Okay, page 21. I had one question maybe for you, Tony, was minor works as far as it relates to a designated landmark structure area. Does that mean anything to you?
yeah,
Or
you're not
is-
allowed to, the interior, we don't care about. The exterior, when it's done, it has to be in the tradition of what the building is. For instance, if you need new eaves or you need siding or something in that order,
Uh-huh.
it has to fall within and not take away from the house. So in other words, you couldn't, if you had a flat top, you couldn't suddenly put a frame roof on the top and say, I want to maintain it. You'd have to maintain that.
So do you feel that definition suits?
Yeah, yeah, it's substantial alter, and the thing is, it's going to vary because we've had two people already come forward. And it's going to vary from something very simple to changing a soffit to something, putting a pool in with a fence, you
Right.
know, so, yeah, I think it covers it and it leaves it open enough that you could actually, you know, make a decision on it.
Anybody else on that page? Okay, we'll shoot on over to 22. I had, once again, I was able to figure out what noise was. I thought I knew what it was, but this definition, any sound which annoys or disturbs humans, or which causes or tends to cause an adverse psychological or physiological effect on humans. Is that the definition of noise?
I will just comment on that, our police chief provided a lot of input
Okay.
on what's proposed in the code update. I'll leave it at that. I think the noise, a lot of the language in the noise section comes from the Kill Double Hills noise ordinance.
Uh-huh.
And I want to say that this all comes from that language.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly go along with noise disturbance because that basically tells you what noise that you don't like is, but I just thought it was odd that we got a definition for noise that said any sound which annoys or disturbs. I don't know. It's fine to leave in. I'm okay with it. I just had a big question mark. Why? Anybody else on that page? Okay. 23. Anybody on 23? Wes, are you?
I had no comments.
I don't have anything.
Okay, 24. I have, once again, I mean, it's just, I'm not sure why they feel the need to define opaque. But they define it as the inability to see across or through a landscaping buffer or similar visual screen.
It's a good point you bring up.
Yeah.
It's not a current definition, but it is used in landscaping requirements.
It's in that, I haven't gotten that far, but
It's the word, the term is used in our current ordinance, and
well, I would certainly say that it needs to, I mean, it's got a new beside it, which means that Code Right added it in. But it needs to be referenced. I mean, maybe at the beginning of the definition, they could say something like, as used in landscaping buffer or visual screening, or make some reference to it other than you look at opaque and you get just a narrow definition of how it's used.
is that a?
I would say just as used in, or for the purposes of, or,
As used in the zoning chapter
yeah.
with respect or in reference to landscaping buffers. Yes, sir. Noted.
Anybody else on page 24? Okay, 25.
And where is that?
Okay, we've got police officer up at the very top of 25. Should we put police chief in that spot or?
We have a comment from earlier to put police chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but we gotta,
I think that the police chief comes under sworn officer.
yeah. Sure. Okay, anybody have anything on 25, page 25 again? Okay, 26. Once again, Wes, in the vein of a brief definition of rear lot line and rear setback, just like we've done in other spots and definitions. Just a brief generic and then refer to the section 22.14.
To rear lot line and rear setback.
Yes.
And just a note, the public assembly definition is now included, which came out of the town code amendment from last year.
Yeah, yeah,
And yes, sir.
yeah. I had that circled and the footnote says it's updated to the public assembly CTA. So there's evidence that we're current. Okay, page 27. In reference level, as it pertains to the regulatory flood reference level, I would note that somewhere in the definition, not just a reference level, because that could mean a lot of things. I would put in parentheses as it pertains to the regulatory flood ordinance or I mean, just reference level.
You mean beside like parentheses?
Potentially a different name and call it the regulatory flood reference level.
Well,
It would still be under R, but
Yep.
strike reference label and just call that the regulatory flood reference level, that definition.
I understand your point, but that term, that's pretty much straight from FEMA.
The reference level.
Reference
term.
level as well as regulatory flood protection elevation. That's,
Okay,
I hate to say that, that's, the language is what it is.
Yeah.
But with something like that, my opinion is that that's something that we leave alone.
okay.
But if you all want to make that, we can certainly do it. I'm not saying no,
No,
I'm just giving you my
Hey, I'll
input.
defer to you.
Because if we were to make that change, there would have to be a lot of changes made to our flood damage prevention ordinance.
Understood. Okay,
But at the same time, that's not the reason why, but it's,
Yeah.
that term is pretty much dictated by FEMA.
well, I'm fine with that explanation. Anybody else on that page?
No.
Page 28. Anybody? Okay, page 29. Once again, all the setback stuff, whether we would call it, as they would have us call it in one section, and then reverts back to the old setback. They call it a required yard. We need to figure out what we want to call it, whether it's a setback or a required yard. And we will get into that when
22.
we jump on zoning. So all of those setbacks, all 6 of them, we will, I guess they're fine as they are right now. They don't really need,
I think during our discussion, rules of measurement,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll come to a decision as to which term we'd rather use, or
well,
whether you all would rather use.
I would certainly like to make it user-friendly, so when someone is looking up setback corner side, that they could go straight to not just section 22, 1.4 or 0.14, but even, zero in on the page number almost, because a lot of people don't understand the setbacks and what they are and how they pertain that are looking at a zoning ordinance. So
add a definition as well as page number.
I would for these like rear lot setbacks, all the stuff that I've kind of requested you to put a definition, a generic definition, and then reference to where it's located.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else on page 29?
Um,
And then once again, there's side lot and side setback. That's redundant straight out. I'm not quite sure. Side lot, side setback.
I just make a comment about, I'm sorry, done with setbacks.
Yeah.
Some of the definitions that we've asked you to just drop, would you do a search in the document to see if we have to change?
Yes, sir.
language?
Whenever we take it out, it's going to most likely affect the
It's
language.
definitely going to affect the language. You're going to have to change the language
Correct.
to something else.
Yes,
Because
sir.
I see the word opaque under semi-nude as part of the definition of
Ah.
semi-nude. So there's quite a few
Well-
references to the word opaque
We
in the language. And so just having the basic definition of opaque is probably not a bad idea.
Uh-huh.
So,
Well,
anyway.
and also too, I mean, we could, in some cases like that, we could delete the definition and probably leave the language as it is. But with something like setbacks and lot lines, if you change the definition, that would be different.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the word opaque is probably not necessary for us to define, but, yeah,
Well-
it's used a lot
And
throughout the code.
to your point, Robert, Wes, if, any suggestions that we're making here pop up and create a snowball effect, I mean, you certainly let us know.
Oh, yes, sir. If any issues arise
Yeah.
with that,
Okay.
we'll have to discuss it further.
All right, anybody on page 30? Okay, page 31. Okay,
I did have one
Oh,
comment.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I apologize for the delay. Special flood hazard area. The reference to 16-3B should be 28.33.
28, what is it?
28.33 in the
Rather
flood damage
than-
prevention ordinance. Again, that's another situation where the reference to the current 16-4 section and the new section that it's trying to reference.
Right.
And it don't match up.
so they got the section number wrong.
Right, it's a minor comment that I have
Okay,
to
great.
pass on. I'll just bring it to your attention.
Okay, thanks. All right. Page 32. I haven't really read into that start of construction other than, a lot of it got deleted, but it's saying that it's part of the flood damage prevention. Do you see anything in that language that we need to be concerned with, Wes?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on page 32?
No, again, it's words like stop or stopping. You know what stop means,
Yeah,
but it's defined, means don't move.
yeah. Uh-huh.
But it's in the definitions.
And it may well end up in, the ordinance that concerns vehicles that might,
Yeah.
if we took it out, something could blow up on, in that section of the town ordinances. Okay, page 33.
I had one comment, substantial improvement. Number two, and I guess I could have clarified further on these similar comments. When I say the references, 16-4E, that's the current language. It should be 28.4.4.
Okay, and
And-
substantial damage.
And number two for substantial improvement. At the very end, see that
Yeah.
section 16-4,
Uh-huh.
the new format doesn't have, that's not the way the other references are.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good eyes. See, that's the part of this that we as a planning board would never catch.
No, I wouldn't.
That's why we let Wes go skiing all the time.
Oh, my Lord.
Okay. Page 34. Anybody?
Just this tall telecommuting tower, I mean, again, that's
Yeah.
just, get rid of that. You already have it in another section, so you don't need it there. And temporary sign, see sign temporary, those two together,
Yeah.
just get rid of it.
Yeah.
See a problem with either one of that?
No, sir.
You just kind of,
Delete them.
yeah. They're already mentioned elsewhere. It's just like turning the phrase backwards and defining it frontwards and backwards. One way is fine. Let's see. Wes, in the temporary use permit, which is a permit authorizing the operation of a temporary use or special event, I haven't kind of cross-referenced back to where the event language got split up into three parts, but I mean, is that adequate for now, temporary use permit?
The current language has references to temporary uses.
But not a permit?
I don't think so.
I don't,
I've got to go back. Yep. In chapter 32, utilities. That's where it comes from. But I don't know why it has a reference to special event in that definition. Permit issued by the town with state and or county concurrent. So I think that's referring to zoning. So that's a good comment. We can,
put a question on that one.
yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else on page 34? Okay, page 35. There's top plate height. Again, and I think, it was defined under height, comma, top plate, so I don't know.
It's redundant.
Yeah. Anybody else on page 35?
Just in reference to townhouse dwelling, if you were eliminating
Uh-huh.
dwelling townhouse.
Mhm.
And then I just have a concern about eliminating townhouse in case down the road, but I guess if that were the case, somebody would bring it up if they were building a road
Yeah.
townhouses. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't imagine that'll get too far.
Well, you never know. The country club has
Yeah,
that land.
sure.
They might want to build
Yeah,
some
yeah, you're right.
residential
Yeah.
townhouses
Yeah.
for older people
Sure.
along the golf course, so. But if
Could
you're
ha-
gonna.
Could happen.
Right, so if you're gonna take the dwelling out in the beginning, then we need to remove that from here, right?
And we can at this point, and so that would pretty much be deleting it from so in chapter 22, that's something else that could come up later on, is in the permitted use table, what uses are there now that currently aren't in our schedule of district regulations. But yeah, that certainly I can make that comment.
So are we saying we're going to leave in the original definition of dwelling townhouse that's on page 12?
Well, no,
Or do
because you had asked to remove that, then
Yeah.
I thought we needed
Well,
to remove this,
You made a good point about
the country club.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
My feeling is maybe we ought to leave it.
yeah, okay. Are you okay with that?
So we just reversed what you just said.
Yeah.
Wes.
Yeah, we're backing up. Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
So just leave townhouse dwelling on page 435 as it is.
Say that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Yes, and you're gonna go back to page 412 and leave that definition
Yeah,
in
the-
on dwelling
yeah,
townhouse.
Great, got it.
Okay. Well, that's the only one we've had to go back on. We haven't done too bad.
Oh.
Okay, moving to, anybody else have anything on page 35?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Page 36.
I had I found two more incorrect references in the definition of violation.
Misnumbered again?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Misnumbered, okay.
16.4 and 16.5,
Yes, sir.
okay. I was curious about, let's see, the use non-conforming, where it says the use of a building or land which does not conform with the regulations of the district in which it is situated, but was lawful before adoption of this town code. I'm assuming there will be a date mentioned at that point in the definition. Before adoption of this town code, wouldn't there be some sort of date mentioned in that definition of non-conforming use? As
No,
it-
because I think they're talking general here, so it could be a number of things that could come up. So it might be, multiple times.
Uh-huh.
So you couldn't put
Yeah.
a specific date because this is more general than a specific
But
item.
when we go back to what a non-conforming use is, there is a date moving forward where non-conforming issues
So
trigger.
the current language is pretty much identical, except at the end it says before adoption of this chapter.
Right.
And in this case, it refers to the adoption of this town code. So there, in the current definition, by referring to adoption of this chapter, it would just be the year that the zoning ordinance was incorporated in the town code, which is
Yeah.
81, 82, I believe.
Yeah.
We could certainly add a definition if that's what you're.
Well, I was just questioning. I mean, I don't have a strong preference one way or the other, but I know that, you know, when the non-conforming ZTA was passed, there's a date. And
I think the
whether or not it lands in there,
the
I'm not
odd
sure.
thing to me is the word lawful. Is that, you know, that it wasn't necessarily lawful then either. It's just that
No,
we just now.
it wasn't.
We've just now put
Yeah.
written or adopted code that identifies that particular thing.
Yeah, it was a hard nut to crack.
Yeah.
I think as a planning board, we did a fair job in including the people that needed to be included and let in, and then excluding from that date forward. And that's what I'm talking about, is
Right.
from that date forward. But it's easy enough to reference it, but, you know, it's just a comment. I don't have a strong preference. Anybody else on page 36?
Just getting rid of unimproved dune walkover
Oh, yeah,
access.
yeah.
And then also vehicle signs, see sign vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We can tighten that up. and get
yeah,
rid of
there you
that.
go. We might have saved a half a page in all these deletions.
Yeah, but we added, we put one back, don't
Yeah,
forget.
that's right. I
Yeah,
know.
we did put one back.
Yeah, we get net zero on pages and definitions, we've done okay.
So it was unimproved dune walkover access and.
Vehicle sign, vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else on page 36? Rolling to page 37.
I think this was a comment in chapter 22 that was brought up. I didn't put it in a topic of discussion that I would suggest, but the definition, wind energy conversion facility. The comment brings up the idea of, I think it states something to the effect that it says wind energy conversion facility, wind generation facility, and it has different terms for the same thing. And my suggestion was to stick with what we have in our requirements now, our ordinance now, with just wind generation facility.
Yeah.
And take that definition out.
Okay, so remove that and replace it with what's currently in.
Yeah, so that would be removed from the definitions as well as from chapter 22. And the new
Right.
definition would be wind generation facility. And all references to that would be changed as well.
Okay,
That was a zoning text amendment not long after I first came here. A lot of time and effort was put into that ordinance as well, the wind
Yeah.
ordinance.
yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Okay. Man. Page 38. The question I had, Wes, was on the very last thing, the zoning permit. Is it going to be called a zoning permit or a building permit moving forward?
There are two separate things.
Yeah.
They're two separate animals.
Yeah,
So I'd suggest we keep that in there.
keep it separate. Yeah. All right. Well, I think my gut feeling is that if there's ambiguity in this, to divert back to the code that exists today, like you just said about the wind definition. And I think in all cases, especially in definitions, if it's worked in our current zoning ordinance for a good while, for the most part, then it's probably applicable to today's. And so I would revert back to some definitions are in here. I know they've cleaned it completely up, obviously. But I think we've knocked out a decent chunk here tonight, and it'll be time to roll into chapter 22.
I have a question. In the definitions, and I'm going back to John Finelli. He wrote a concern on November 24th of 2020, and it was about kennels. And I see there's no definition of kennel here. Is there any consideration of that? Because he was concerned with Martin's Point because they are a kennel. It's a veterinary clinic and kennel. And he said he wanted to know if, I'm reading his email comment, the term kennel should be revised to kennels not associated with veterinary clinic. So I don't know, there is no definition of kennel in the definitions, and it is addressed later on, I believe.
Yes, sir. I had a note is that for that as well in chapter 22 that you just,
But
I see
what you're saying is there is no definition of kennel.
There's no definition of kennel, and John expressed a question, is it, if it's attached to a veterinary clinic,
Right.
if it's a separate
Yeah.
kennel, what,
A boarding clinic
a
versus.
boarding,
Yeah,
what
or kennel.
is the actual definition, or how is it addressed? Because he said, I didn't read it, but he said the way it was addressed in the chapter, the zoning chapter, like Martin's Point, can't have a kennel, which they do. Now, that's according to him.
I can't put my eyes on my notes because I added a reference to Mr. Finelli's email, but his comments will be forwarded as well. I mean,
Okay.
Well, and certainly while we're talking tonight about definitions, if that wasn't in there,
No, there's no kennel definition.
then we need to,
Well, there's no
No, the-
veterinary in here either.
No,
yeah,
there's no veterinary clinic
Yeah.
either.
and
And
his-
that was his concern.
yeah. Yeah, we need to take, at least at the minimum, to define a kennel and a veterinary clinic without a, in parentheses, without a kennel in the definitions. I don't think anything else that John had in here pertained to definitions,
No,
more so into the next chapter that we're gonna,
yeah. The
Get into-
fences and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which we've already addressed, actually.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like
Okay.
non-conforming use.
Anybody else have any concerns with the definitions outside of adding kennel and veterinary definitions? Well, I would say, listen, Wes, how about, you got anything to add to what we've taken on tonight as far as definitions go?
No, sir. I think y'all have done a good job reviewing these definitions, and these were good comments.
Well, do we have any new business? I don't see any.
No, sir.
Moving on the agenda. Public comment. Matt? Okay, well, planning board member comments. And I'll start with you, Tony.
The only thing I have, it's very brief. Wes, we have new members. Welcome. Could you send out a new contact list
Yes.
for everybody?
Yes,
So
sir.
we all have the contact list if we need it. Okay.
So you want a individual document that has the contacts shown on them, or you're just referring to email addresses, or?
Last time you put an individual document down.
Okay, with phone numbers and email addresses. I see.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what you did last time. But
Yes,
if
yes, sir, I can do that.
people are opposed to that, the email address is fine too, whatever.
I'm fine with email and phone.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I'll send that to the board.
Then also, Wes, just a matter of bookkeeping. I looked on the site today and you need to put Tony as vice chair. And then, I don't know, maybe give a big stack of these to Sheila, but I think we probably need to start signing the final minute drafts. I haven't signed one since I've been chairman, I don't think.
Right.
I don't remember seeing you sign them all, but you may have, I don't know. But anyway, I think for cleaning up the house, I need to, as chairman, sign off on, I mean, just assemble as many as you can, Sheila, and I'll come in and just sign them rather than scan them back over. I'll pick them up and sign them or something.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Member comments down there? Got any? Rob? Okay, well, I guess, next order of business, Wes, is what's next?
Our next meeting in March, the third Monday of the month, March 15th. I don't have any pending applications. So you all select which chapter or chapters you'd like to continue with your discussion.
Well, I would certainly say that chapter 22's
Yeah.
in order. It's, as we have found out, it's been worked over pretty good by Ben. It's been noted with Wes, and he's picked up some stuff outside of what he's given us in his bullets that we needed to talk about. But I would say if we could get into about a third of the front end of that zone, and I think the back end might be a little bit easier than the front end. What's your take? I mean, how do you see it developing?
Well, yeah, I mean, as we referenced earlier, the measurement section
Yeah.
is at the beginning. And I'll say it again, that's going to require some discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Well, I think it's important that as a planning board, we are prepared to do it, and because it's a lot there, but at the same time, the reason that I digressed at the beginning of this meeting was to show you what can happen if you start trying to create something new out of something that's already there. And I think the previous planning board battled that. They were trying to fix stuff that needed fixed in the town, and eventually it got fixed in those ZTAs that we were able to get passed. But the planning board bogged down trying to fix what was there. And I think we got a pretty good zoning ordinance right now with all the stuff that we've been through in the last couple of years. But we're updating. I understand that. We've got to change, but we need to be prepared to look at what we've got in the ordinance right now and compare it to what they've put in the new right that they've done. So I would say going through and studying this next venture that we're going to have next month is going to be to look at the old ordinance, how it pertains to what is out there right now. And, you know, hopefully we won't have to dig in too deep, but we're going to have to dig in.
And I guess another point we need to bring up as well is I believe you all had indicated at the last planning board meeting that what we would like to have, or you all would like to have Chad Meadows with Code Right virtually present at the March meeting for questions.
I don't know. What do you all feel about
I
that?
think we're progressing quite well. That's
Yeah.
why I said to hold off to see what this
Yeah.
month,
I-
this meeting would handle. And I think we're progressing. And if we run into a problem, we could always do it another month, the following month,
I'm
you know?
absolutely fine with that. I think it might muddy the waters for what we're trying to do. It might bog us down where we need to move on. I mean, if you think that we need to meet with him, certainly we'll do it, but.
Okay. And as an update, kind of aside with that, the town council has, they're going to be at least starting the process of moving forward with the other chapters in the code update.
Right.
They're going to start that discussion in the March meeting, the regular March meeting. And I believe Chad's going to be, he's going, is that the meeting he's attending? I think that's I believe he will be at one of the next couple meetings,
Well,
virtually.
if we had concerns, I could certainly, we could maybe have a little bit of his time, as a planning board, or, you could represent us in our concerns. But I don't see the need in getting him in this mix right now. I think if what we've noted tonight in definitions is a good kind of segue to going into the zoning chapter, I think we're doing fine without him.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, well, anybody else have anything?
I won't be here for the March 15th.
Yeah. Oh, is anybody opposed to meeting at 5 again? It's 2 hours, but I'd rather it be 7 o'clock than 7:30 right now.
Yeah. Make a
5
motion.
o'clock,
that we-
okay?
Work for me?
Do we need to make a motion?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
So moved.
Now, do we need a motion for the 5 o'clock meeting to change?
It's probably, it won't hurt.
Can I make a motion that the
Uh-oh.
meeting be moved from 5:30 to 5?
Second.
We got a second?
Wait a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No.
Nope.
Adjourned. Thank y'all. Thank you, Wes. Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
To get another storage
Holy
cabinet.
moly.
We're working on, get another storage cabinet.
Oh, geez. Between this